being from the Midwest or growing up in the Midwest especially, did you have like a personal connection to this movie?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely the small town nature,
Mm-hmm.
because I lived in small towns up until I moved to Tulsa and then moved to New York City and then moved to Los Angeles. So,
Okay.
definitely the small town nature of,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, a crime happened.
Yeah.
Like a violent crime in a
Mm-hmm.
small town. So not that my town had one, but but I know what it's like for, it to be kind of shocking and
Yeah.
for people to everyone knows each other. So like when something happens like that, it's a big deal. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I love like I don't remember when I first saw this movie. I think I mean it was quite a long time ago, and I've been, a Coen Brothers fanatic for kind of as long as I can remember, I think. This is probably one of their earliest movies that I saw. And the thing that I always latch on to is kind of what you're saying about everyone knowing each other. This kind of like folksy niceness, the like over politeness. And I
Mm-hmm.
got a little bit of this when I used to play in bands a lot, and when I would travel to tour or whatever, I think we played one show in Minneapolis, and then there were other kind of parts of the Midwest where we traveled through, but I never really spent any amount of time there. But I did get this sense of, they call it the Minnesota Nice, I guess, which happens to be a book that I think the cast used in order to help their accents and everything.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know
Um,
that.
and I know a lot of people from that region. I work with a lot of people in my day job. I work with some folks from Detroit who have that, and they've been in Tennessee for many, many years, but they have that very,
Mm,
very thick Midwestern accent still.
yeah, yeah.
And
That's so interesting.
it's so charming, like the kind of folksy, like almost lilt of that accent. A lot of things that they say almost sound like questions towards the end of them, where you
Oh
like have
yeah.
that like upward inflection almost,
Yeah.
and the sort of over politeness in this movie juxtaposed with this crazy brutal violence.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
have just always found so fascinating, and obviously it's a very
Yeah.
funny movie. It's very darkly comic. I actually was just looking right before we started recording. I was looking at the latest Letterboxd showdown was dark comedies, and Fargo was number one. It was
Wow.
voted number one by the
Wow. I love those
yeah
because they really are such a great amalgamation of how people truly feel about these things.
yeah
It's not like somebody who works for a publication like made a ranking. Like
yeah
these are so real. So I
yeah
love those showdowns.
yeah. They're really cool. I always try and I always forget about them because they just they happen every so often. But
Yeah.
anytime I catch it, I'm like, oh, I should try and make
Yeah.
a list. Which I mean, I just love that exercise of making lists of,
hmm
especially in regards to movies. But I guess we could start with some like trivia, especially with this movie. Like, I feel like this is one of those movies where I've seen a bunch of times, but I never really knew that much about the making of it and stuff.
Hmm.
And I don't know how you watch this. I have a little Blu-ray that has a couple pretty decent special features on it. It's very minimal, but
Got it.
one was this like 20-minute kind of behind the scenes thing that I think they must have filmed while they were working on the movie, and I found out some interesting stuff
Ooh.
through it.
Okay.
Specifically, like Peter Stormare, who plays Georg Grimsrud, him being a Swede and them filming this in Minneapolis and also some other places I think they went to. There's one place they mentioned where they were like 2 miles from the Canadian border. I can't remember what town it was.
Wow.
They had to travel because the snow kept melting,
Oh my gosh. Okay.
and
And
there are
it's such a
actually
big part of the movie.
yeah, and a huge part of the movie too is them filling the sets and the well, the locations I should say, with artificial snow because it
Hmm.
wasn't cold enough to snow apparently.
Interesting. Wow.
William H Macy has a great quote that he said, normally at that time of year Minneapolis is so cold that the witch's tits call in sick. Um,
Wow, it's a great play on like a saying.
Yeah, yeah,
Little
exactly.
twist.
Yeah, so they had to use all this fake snow. But the Peter
Wow.
Stormare thing, he was talking in this behind the scenes thing about on their days off they would just like drive around to these little towns in the surrounding area, and he met so many people who were Swedish or were of Swedish descent who
Mm,
were like extremely proud of that, and he even is talking about like some of these places being more Swedish than his home country, and there
interesting.
would
Like
be like
there's more pride for it.
yeah, and I think it's such a part of that. I mean, there were like millions of Scandinavian immigrants who settled that area initially,
Mm,
I think.
yeah.
And he was talking about like you would go in these diners and there would be photos of the king and queen of Sweden in the diner, and
Whoa.
he's like we don't even have that back home.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
That's
there were all these
fascinating.
all these cool little tidbits that I found out. The title, of course, the film is set in Brainerd in Minnesota, but the Coens liked the sound of the word Fargo better. They
Hmm.
liked that as a title better.
Yeah. I
Um,
think their instincts were right.
yeah, I mean it's
Yeah.
a very like strong, just one word,
Yeah.
evocative. Especially now, I think in hindsight, now that they've done like 4 seasons of the TV series and everything.
Yeah.
That being its kind of like anthology version of this movie. The wood chipper apparently resides on display at the Fargo Moorhead Visitor Center.
Whoa.
You
Whoa.
can you can
Okay.
go see it if you're ever up
Wow.
that
That's so
way.
dark.
Yeah, yeah. But that's another thing is like I think the pride, like them just being so proud of. Well, the Coens who grew up in Minneapolis and around there talked about when they went back how going back was like so strange, and they had felt like when they moved to New York, it was like a completely different world and totally removed. They described growing up there as being like Siberia with family restaurants.
Whoa.
Another
Whoa.
good quote. What else? There's some other stuff. I mean, 7 Oscar nominations,
Yeah.
with 2 wins for Frances McDormand for Best
Wow.
Actress and original screenplay. They also spoke about how that was kind of like completely a surprise. No one really expected this small movie, which was a very small budget for them
Mm,
at the time, to be this kind of like award-winning
wow.
thing. I don't think any of them
Huh.
expected that.
That's
Uh,
interesting. And
yeah,
it's so and like awards reception aside, like it's so iconic too.
yeah,
It's such an
yeah. I mean,
iconic film.
it's kind of strange to think about now of it coming out at the time, and no one really thought anything much was going to happen of it. And then I mean, I think it's easily one of their best regarded movies. A lot of people put it right up there at the top.
Yeah. I definitely feel like Lebowski has like a cult attached to it.
Hmm.
Like I just know so many people who that's like their favorite movie of
Yeah,
all time.
yeah,
Um so it definitely has like its own like cultural thing, but I think Fargo is yeah, probably considered one of the best.
yeah,
I love these facts. This is great
yeah. I
'cause
mean, there was some fun stuff. The other thing that I was going to mention about the Blu-ray anyway was that there was a commentary with Roger Deakins, the
ooh,
cinematographer on this film, cinematographer on most of the Coen Brothers movies, certainly all of
yeah.
their best ones.
Well,
And
my favorite, he didn't work on my favorite
okay,
of
what's your
their
favorite?
films. I don't know if you can see, but behind me I have a
Oh
framed
yeah, yeah,
it's the Llewyn Davis album
beautiful.
cover. Um
That's a great
yeah,
movie.
that
I love that
it's
movie.
my favorite. I wouldn't say it's one of their best, but it is my
Your
favorite.
personal, yeah.
But I do sometimes wonder like what Llewyn Davis would look like if Roger Deakins had worked on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really
Not that
interesting the
it
ones that
looks
he
bad. It looks
right.
great.
Yeah. I can't do you remember who shot that film? I can't remember.
I don't. I wish I did.
Um I have a deep personal connection to that movie as well. I mean specifically through the music.
Mm. Mm. Do you
When that
like
film came out, myself and many of my musician friends were like pretty obsessed with it, and we learned a bunch of the songs and stuff.
yeah, makes
Um
sense. It also just I feel like anyone who is an artist who has tried to put their art out there and
mhm.
has been confronted with the reality of it doesn't exist in a vacuum. Everything, has to be sellable is
Yeah.
such it's very relatable.
Yeah, I love that moment when he's singing the song to the guy, to the like club promoter guy, and he just goes, "I don't hear money in this,"
I don't
or
see
something like that.
I don't see a lot of money here.
I don't see a lot of money here. Yeah,
It's devastating.
yeah,
But yeah, I feel like that's the rug that's been pulled out of, so many artists when you're like, yeah, I made this thing, it's great. I put everything into it. And people are like, cool. Will it sell? I don't
right.
think it will.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's just that movie threw me off the first time I saw it. I was like, what the hell? It was so bleak.
yeah,
But I found myself coming back to it again and again and again and again. And I feel like every time I watch it, it gets better. So
yeah. That's kind of how I feel about most of their films. Honestly, like a lot of this. I mean, I've seen Big Lebowski like 100 times. I've seen Oh Brother Where Art Thou so many times. No
oh
Country
my
for Old
gosh,
Men
so
so many
many
times.
times.
I just
Yeah, what's
yeah
interesting is I saw No Country for Old Men when it came out, and it had all this hype and all this buzz, and it was like Oscar winning. And I think it was last year, I was like, I'm gonna rewatch it. I actually like rewatched every Coen Brothers film last year.
cool.
And when I got to No Country for Old Men, I was kind of bracing myself for it to be maybe this is something that got a little too hyped when it came
Yeah,
out. I wonder how it's gonna land. And I watched it and I was like, damn, it's still so
yeah.
good.
It's
It's
so good.
so good. So
It's
that
just
was nice.
Bruno Del Bonell was the cinematographer on
Hmm.
Inside Llewyn Davis.
Okay.
Who I know that name. He's shot a lot of stuff. He shot Amelie. Also
Okay.
shot Joel Coen's Tragedy of Macbeth from 2021.
Okay. Loved
Yeah,
it.
he's been. Oh, he also did Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Okay, so
Okay.
he's been
Okay.
working with
Yeah.
them for a
So
little
he's
while.
good. He's good. It's
Yeah,
just
he's a good one.
the absence of Deacons is very, like
You can tell. Yeah,
yeah.
you can tell. I mean, Deakins is like he just has a certain way with light and with I mean that the commentary on this disc is pretty illuminating because you're just kind of watching them like any other commentary. You're kind of just watching the movie. Every once in a while, he just pops in with like, "Oh, this shot was really interesting because da 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 da," and um, finding out some stuff there. I mean, the thing he kept going back to was just how small the budget was and how like they were constantly having to just like create things on the fly and invent
Mm,
stuff. The
interesting.
shot, probably my favorite shot in the movie, of the empty parking lot with those little trees and the little plots.
Yeah.
Jerry is walking out to his car.
Yep.
They had initially intended that shot to be like a full parking lot. And
Oh.
when they woke up that morning to start work, they were looking out, and this apparently one car had like driven through there overnight. And so
Damn.
Deacon sees these tracks in the snow, and he is telling the Coens, he's like, what if it's just this, like just this very stark, like graphic image
Wow.
where we see a very tiny figure walking, and it's stuff like that
Wow.
I feel like, makes so many of the shots in this movie and so many of the moments in this movie
Wow.
so memorable.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Just on the fly, like
yeah,
come up with truly iconic imagery.
yeah. They
That's
were having
incredible.
to, when the kidnappers are driving away with Jean at night, and the trooper pulls up behind them. He's talking about, well, we were trying to figure out how to light this, and we didn't really have a lot of money for like lots of expensive rigs and stuff. And at some point, somebody was just like, well, if you were out here at night, the only thing you would see are like headlights anyway.
Mm,
So they just kind of made the decision, we're just going to light this entire scene with only the headlights.
wow.
And it makes it so that you see that in Blood Simple as well and a lot of
Yeah,
their other movies, but it makes it so memorable, just the way that the cinematography
it's
is
true. And it
designed.
also it being so grounded too, like that, it may like even subconsciously put the viewer like, they've been somewhere, like stopped on the side of the road when all you have
Hmm.
are your headlights. So it's like I wonder if subconsciously that like kind of grounds the audience too.
Yeah, because it's very familiar, right? And that's something else about this movie that, I mean, when I sat down to watch it, it was like I didn't do this, but I should have gotten like a blanket and a cup of tea and just like, there is a kind of,
It's cozy.
it's very cozy, as kind of crazy as that sounds to say about this movie.
Yeah.
Which is absurd and hilarious and dark and brutal, and much of it, like almost, the Coens have this thing to me that they kind of tread this line between like nothing making any sense in the plots of their movies, but it all just kind of perfectly fitting together.
Yeah.
Someone once described it as, I think it was some interview that I was watching, and this guy was describing it as being the perfect balance of wise ass and profound.
Wow. No, that's legitimately, this last time I was watching it for this podcast, I was kind of struck with the thought that it's very similar to that, which is, this is going to sound ridiculous, but like it reminded me a little bit of like how people regard Shakespeare, in that like highbrow, like, cinephiles love this. But like people like my dad, who doesn't know anything about film, loves this movie. Like it kind of like, no matter who you are, this movie affects you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, it's really accessible in that way, as a lot of their films are. I mean, the opening starts with the very now infamous "This is a true story" Chiron, which of course it wasn't. In fact, speaking again on those special features, William H. Macy was saying, they were on set one day and he was like, so what was the real case about? And they're like, what are you talking about? And he goes, yeah, what it's based on. They're like, we just made it up.
Oh my gosh.
It's all made up.
Incredible.
And he was so just like struck by that, in a way of, he said like, you can't do that. You can't like just make something up and then say it's based on a true story. And it does feel like, they're the kind of filmmakers who, especially at this time in their career, they're getting away with a lot of stuff that, that most people wouldn't even really try. The police departments kind of across this area ended up having to field a bunch of calls from people after this movie came out who were claiming that they knew things about these crimes.
Oh no.
That were obviously, invented.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty remarkable.
I did not know that. That's incredible.
But the wood chipper aspect, that apparently was taken from real accounts. Apparently there had been, I don't know if it was one or numerous stories about that happening.
Ooh.
But that's like the one kind of shockingly real aspect.
Oh my God. One of the darkest.
yeah. By the time you see it at the end, you're just like, what the fuck? But yeah, I love how it starts. I love this look that they're going for right away. The kind of like hazy snow, empty, very like vast kind of wasteland.
Yeah.
Carter Burwell's score, I think this might be his best score. Like,
so good. I love the Blood Simple score.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
But this one, I think there's more of it in this film. So yeah, I could see this being considered the best.
Yeah, he's very minimal in a lot of his work. There's that one kind of theme in this that sort of plays a few times. He also does this in Carol really well. I love that score. That might be my favorite of his scores.
Oh wow.
But this one is just like, as soon as you hear this music, you're just like right back in the world. Yeah. It just perfectly matches the direction and everything. And then, we get this meeting where we're introduced to Jerry Landergaard. I'm going to do that accent a lot in this podcast.
That's
by
okay.
The way.
That's okay. I think it's necessary.
I think it's necessary too, especially when we're like quoting. Yeah. He meets with Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare's characters, and it's kind of immediately apparent how stupid this guy is.
God, he's so out of his depth.
He's so out of his depth.
Remarkably so.
Yeah. The plan itself is just like so ridiculous. And something that for some reason I caught this time, but I never really thought about before, is he's explaining that he's in bad shape. He's in some trouble, basically, is all he really says. We never find out what trouble Jerry is in. It's just made apparent over the course of the movie that he's trying to get money from all these various different sources.
That's interesting. I don't even think that I thought about that, but you're right. It's almost like it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's more what matters is what he's willing to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there could be a scene where he's like explaining, well, I did this and this, and now I owe all this
Yeah.
money to these people. But we never uncover that. And that's, I think, also something that just makes the mystery and the kind of like absurdity of this story
Mm,
more interesting.
that is interesting.
Sort of in the way that like No Country for Old Men, we don't exactly find out where the case came from and like
Yeah.
what went wrong there. I think the Coens love to play with this idea of like you're just suddenly in a situation
Yes.
and not really
Yes.
like knowing
Yeah.
why.
They really like to do in a film I've noticed multiple shifts of power.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could call it power, you could call it like good luck or whatever, but like somebody's circumstance, like people's circumstances in their films change again and again and again.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
interesting.
And almost by chance a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the probably best example of that, and this is when towards the end we'll get to it, but Marge is just driving around the lake and she just happens to drive
She
by.
sees the one car she's
She
looking
sees
for.
that car, and it's just like in any other like screenplay or like narrative, someone would feel the need to like explain that or like
Yeah.
have a reason to have her get to that place.
Yeah.
And they're just like, yeah, she's just driving. She's
She found
just
it.
driving around.
She
Yeah,
just found it.
it just happened.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So Jerry needs this money, and the next instance we get of this is the dinner scene where they're having dinner at home with his wife's father, and I love his complete like lack in confidence in Jerry, like right away. They have this tumultuous kind of fraught relationship, it seems.
Yeah.
And he's asking him for money to buy a lot, which he's going to turn into a parking lot. All his little schemes are
Oh my
just
God.
like
It's so sad. And like I think when I was younger and watched this film, I felt for him. Because I mean, William H. Macy plays him so well.
Yeah.
He's just this
Yeah.
poor guy, and like his troubles could be a little, relatable. Just not knowing what he's doing and being stressed. So I think I used to kind of feel for him and feel a little bit bad for him.
Mhm.
Although this time through watching it, I was like, screw this guy.
Yeah.
Because of the whole plan with his wife.
Yeah.
Like putting her in danger like that is so shitty.
Yeah, yeah.
It's and also like if nothing had happened to her, like if nothing bad had happened to her,
Right.
imagine the emotional trauma she still would have gotten
Yeah.
from
And now
having
they
been
have to
abducted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this time through, I was just like, okay, screw this guy.
Yeah.
More so than I think I ever kind of felt previously.
Yeah, because he has zero empathy. He's a complete buffoon. I mean, I think that's what's so interesting of Macy playing him in this kind of endearing way. Especially in some of those scenes, like anytime he's in his office talking to somebody at the car dealership, I think are my favorite scenes with Jerry. He's a terrible salesman.
Yeah.
He's a bad liar.
Oh my God.
He is.
I love when he's telling the couple, like, well, I'll go talk to my boss.
Yeah.
And then he kind of goes in and he doesn't really ask the boss. He's just like,
no.
hey, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And then he
Make
comes
it look
back
like
and
he asked.
yeah. And then he comes back with just the worst like retort of like, well, I can knock $100 off.
No. Damn.
I guess the next thing was him with that call that he gets when he's in his office about the cars and the serial numbers.
Oh.
Another,
So stressful.
Another like he's trying to get off the phone so badly and just freaking out. I love any of his scenes where he's just like clearly crumbling.
Yeah. I have to say he is very, for someone who's like trying to like get himself out of this hole, he is very aggro to the people that are having to interact with him.
Yeah.
Like Marge, he's just so rude to her.
Yeah.
And the person on the phone about the serial numbers, he's just so mean.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, wow, that's that's bold.
Yeah. Well, and because you can see like any time he feels like he's about to be found out or about to be caught, yeah, he just loses his marbles. the Paul Bunyan statue, which is a looming presence. You can see it behind me here.
Yeah.
Throughout the film, I really love according to Deakins, that was a prop. Well, actually, I don't know if it was something he said or something I found elsewhere. It was a prop that was made. Although there is a real Paul Bunyan statue in Brainerd.
Okay.
But it is a smiling, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Which I think would be even creepier than the version that we see in the film that isn't smiling.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you seen, I'm trying not to derail, but have you seen the film Blow the Man Down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it, to me, when I watched it, I was like, this feels very Fargo.
Yes.
Just in the, like, it's in this, like, the northern
Irish movie,
setting.
right?
No, it's American,
okay,
but it's
yeah.
like kind
They're
of
in like
American.
Maine, maybe,
Yeah,
or something like
it's
that.
like
Okay,
very, very northern. So it kind of had like a similar setting, but
Mhm.
there's like a scene where like two of the characters, like their car kind of like runs into this like cardboard cutout. I don't know if it's Paul Bunyan or if it's something similar, but it felt very much like an homage, and like it falls over onto the car, and
Yeah.
like, okay, all right, this definitely feels like
Yeah, I
an
remember
homage.
the tone of that movie being very, very Coen Brothers, of a crime surrounded by this kind of comic absurdity.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I need to see that again. It's been many years since I watched that.
Watched it probably 5 or 6 times that year.
Wow.
I don't know why. It just like it had a hold on me. I was like, this is dark, but it's funny. But it is very similar to me to like especially early Coen Brothers, where it's just kind of like very scrappy, you can tell, like scrappily made, and just about people kind of learning about the criminal underworld of their small town.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. The next thing I think we get is when Wade calls Jerry and tells him that his accountant, Stan
Ooh.
Grossman, he likes to say that a few times, checked out the deal that he was proposing, and Stan says it's pretty sweet, according to Wade. I love that they repeat that too. Just, just all of the kind of like little phrases and things.
Yeah. And I've read that their dialogue in the script is very intentional.
Oh yeah.
I've read some things before about, even if it seems like an actor might be like ad-libbing or like their character is just making noises or something, like it's all word for word, sound for sound in their scripts. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're darn tootin'. You betcha.
They really capture.
There's just like a lot of really fun wording. And so now that he thinks that he's going to have this money from Wade, he tries to call off the kidnapping.
Oh my God.
And can't get a hold of that. We also get this scene here where Carl and Gayar are driving in the car from Fargo to Minneapolis, and these two together it's kind of the whole movie. I think is their relationship a little bit.
So good.
It's so funny. Buscemi is just complaining about this guy not talking, and I love the whole like kind of tangent he goes on where he's like, all right, total silence, absolute fucking silence. I'll try it on you and see how you like it. Total silence, and he just keeps talking, really funny.
He's so good.
He's so good. They're great together too. I think this feels like Peter Stormare's like kind of breakout role. You see him pop up in things now and again. Always an amazing like character actor.
So good.
He was doing a play with Frances McDormand, and the Coens came to see it, and that's how they ended up casting him.
Wow. And
this moment of after the kidnapping, which of course goes horribly wrong, I kept thinking about, actually this time watching it, a weird little connection to Big Lebowski, which I had never drawn before, which is how they talk about in that movie how they think Bunny has kidnapped herself. And there's an element of this scene where this kidnapping is happening that made me think of that, of like, because she attempts to kind of flee. She goes into the bathroom.
Yeah.
The classic age-old trick of opening the window but hiding
Yeah.
behind the shower curtain. And then she kind of bursts out with the shower curtain over her, can't see, is running
Ugh.
from room to room, falls down the stairs, knocks herself out. That just made me think of, oh, she probably kidnapped herself, like that element. But I love how comical and how stupid that scene is, because Gayar, he's trying to find something in the medicine cabinet. I can't remember.
Oh, for his hand, I think.
Yeah, for his hand. And he's just kind of like bewildered at the whole thing, just kind of watching it unfold.
Yeah. He's not putting a lot of effort in.
No, not at all. And throughout the entire film, he's like,
he's there.
It's so strange. Of course, he has his big scene shortly, but anyway, Jerry is talking with Wade and Stan Grossman about the money, the ransom money, and Wade's moment of where he's like, $1 million is a lot of money. He's like weighing the cost of his daughter's life with the monetary
a true
loss.
Businessman.
Yeah. That's kind of the moment in this film where like, oh, all these guys are despicable. Like they're all pieces of shit. That amazing overhead shot, which I mentioned earlier, that happens right after this. The moment of Jerry scraping the ice off his car and getting really like angry. There's so many one takes in this movie too, which I don't think I had really thought about before. But that's something that Deakins calls to attention as well on the commentary of like, yeah, we set this up. They wanted one camera and they kind of just shoot the scene from one point of view. Wow. There are a lot of scenes like that, and that was one of them. And he said that they did, 3 or 4 of them and just picked the best one. And
wow.
When you're shooting on a very limited budget, that makes total sense.
Yeah. I've read that that's how their films kind of were so cheap to make early on, was that they were so tight with their scheduling and with their script and with everything. They pretty much had everything like so ready to go. So when they went to shoot, it was like everything kind of went perfectly.
Yeah. And you get so much from just like seeing a one shot, like one take of a character doing something. Like it informs the character so much more, I feel like, if you were like cutting back and forth between different takes and different performances. Yeah. Which they rarely do. But then we get the moment where the nighttime scene where the kidnappers are driving. Carl tries to bribe the state trooper, and Gayar just immediately shoots him. And I love Carl's reaction too. He keeps saying "Whoa, Daddy" over and over again, and you're just like, where did that come from, and why is he saying that? And
it's like in this area, even the criminals are cheesy.
Yeah, they have these like corny expressions and the way they react to things and stuff.
It's so funny.
Yeah, then there's this moment of they're having to drag the body of the state trooper off the road, and another car is coming, and Gayar decides to chase them down and shoots them. So the biggest thing I want to talk about here is this thing that I posted online. You commented on this, so I think you know what I'm going to talk about. God. This thing that I found online, or I found in the credits of this movie. When I was watching the credits of this movie, there is a person who is credited as victim in field, presumably the person who Gayar shoots. In the red coat, there's a great
person on the poster.
Yeah, exactly. It's the person on the poster of the film in the red coat, laying in the snow, face down. But the credit is the Prince symbol.
Yeah, when I saw you post that, and I was just like, kind of shocked, because like I like this movie. I like the Coen brothers. I love Prince.
Yeah,
and I was like, how have I never even seen this before?
Yeah, I had never seen it, but I've seen this movie at least 5 or 6 times, and I had never noticed it before.
That's wild.
And when I started to try and kind of like look around, and I couldn't really find much research about it. I think a few people came into the comments and were saying some interesting things. Most seem to think that it's just kind of like an inside joke, but
that's what I read, and like there wasn't a source. I think what I found was like a Reddit post from 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it basically was somebody saying that the person lying in the field was like their storyboard editor or something.
Yeah.
So it definitely wasn't Prince.
Yeah.
But that it might have been a joke, especially because like Prince is from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was probably just a joke.
Yeah.
It's so
Um,
wild.
it's so weird. And what's interesting is that so when I was watching I did this thing where that I haven't actually done before with the podcast where I watched it Thursday and then I watched it again last night with
Mm,
Roger Deakins' commentary.
whoa. Love that.
Um, and I haven't done that in a really long time. I usually try and wait a while before I rewatch something that soon.
Yeah.
But he mentions during this sequence that the person who is running away, who gets shot by Gayar, is a guy named J. Todd, the storyboard artist, like you mentioned,
Okay.
who turned out to worked on like a lot of other big movies and stuff. And I guess he was just kind of there, and they needed a body, and they needed somebody to play
Yeah.
that part. But what I could not figure out is then later when after we meet Marge, and she's going to investigate the crime scene. Is that the same person who was in the previous scene? Is it someone who's just lying on the ground there, or is it a dummy? Because they mention, Deakins also mentions that for certain shots here, where they're filming the morning scene, the daytime scene,
Yeah.
he was like, at one point we had a dummy that we were using in the field, because it was so cold, and they didn't want the actors to kind of like have to lay
I
in the
was gonna
snow for a
say,
really long
yeah,
time.
that would be brutal.
But then he kind of contradicts himself and said immediately, well, now that I think about it, I know that it was so and so who was lying there, and he just lay there while we were shooting the take. So
Huh.
this whole like Prince symbol victim and field conundrum thing is
Interesting.
really weird and interesting. And
Who really was
who
it?
was it? Which one is supposed to be? Because there's only one like victim and field.
Yeah.
And the fact that that ends up being the most iconic image from the movie
Yeah.
is pretty funny and weird. I am kind of choosing to believe that it's the Minneapolis connection.
Yeah.
A few people pointed out that there's a smiley face within the circle
Oh, okay.
of
Almost
the
like a
symbol,
little wink
like
wink.
yeah, like a little wink. So maybe it's just a joke, but I
Interesting.
find it fascinating regardless.
Well, what is something that I think is really interesting is apparently after Prince died, it came out that he had been donating a ton of money to like the arts programs for schools in
Mm,
the Minnesota. And so like maybe there's something maybe he did contribute in
that's
some way, but
interesting.
it's been kept under wraps.
That's interesting. I mean, and two, this is the time where he is the artist formerly known as Prince, where he's not going by his name and using that symbol for everything.
Yeah.
Fascinating little weird thing to think about. And also, like, we just don't get this kind of stuff in movies anymore,
Mm,
where
yeah.
it's like everybody knows everything about the film before it even comes out, and there's
Yeah.
no like sense of
Mystery. There's no mystery.
mystery or no like little surprise that you learn later on.
Yeah.
Um, which is, just kind of sad.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to kind of like culture wise get back to a place where there can be these little like hidden Easter egg type things
Yeah.
that kind of have no explanation.
Yeah. Or legends. Do you remember how many legends like
Oh yeah.
what was it that there was like a ghost and three men and a baby, like stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah, the
Like we don't
person
have
in
those anymore.
the Wizard of Oz thing where there's a person
Yeah.
like hanging in the
Yeah.
yeah, so many ruined by the internet, like many
Yeah.
things. But this is like, it's kind of crazy that the inciting incident of this movie happens like a full 30 minutes into the movie, because
That is interesting.
this murder, when this murder happens, when Gayar kills these people, the next thing we see, we're finally introduced to Marge Gunderson and her husband. We get this beautiful, nice little tracking shot of them in their home, asleep in the bed, and a phone call wakes her up. And the movie just like immediately like makes a 180 where you're just kind of like now in the presence of these new characters who live this nice little quiet life, it seems. And on top of that, she's pregnant. another, I keep referring to this Deacon's commentary, but he was just talking about like how he loved how the movie takes that turn like 30 minutes in of like
That's interesting.
now presenting you with these new characters, and you're not even sure if it's even going to like totally connect or not quite yet.
Yeah. That's
Um,
interesting. I feel like I'm usually like pacing is such a I think about it a lot when I'm
yeah,
watching a film, and usually when things take too long to kick off, I am like angry.
yeah,
But that's so funny. I don't think I ever really thought that in any of my viewings, and I think it's because everything that they're showing up until it kicks off is very entertaining.
yeah. And I mean, it's just, it's so tight. Like as a screenplay and as a film, the pacing is kind of perfect. But
Yeah.
yeah, you wouldn't even think about until, you know, several viewings, I guess, that our main character, we kind of don't even really meet her until 30 minutes in.
That's fascinating.
And then, you know, the funniest like crime scene investigation I think I've ever seen. it's
It's so polite.
it's just so like goofy, and and she's the only one doing, she has this partner, what's his name, Lou,
Oh yeah.
and he's just kind of standing there holding their coffees for the whole time while she's
Yeah.
examining the scene, and he's kind of like telling her things, whatever he knows so far,
Yeah.
and she's like looking at the footprints and the way they shoot it too, like when she gets down on the ground and you see the dead body up really close and she's just kind of
Yeah.
like behind it looking around.
And it's also emotionless too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know that she's horrified by this, but like you wouldn't know it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, they get there and she just goes, "So, double homicide, huh?" Just like kind of like very matter of fact, very like, "All right, this is what we're doing today."
It's so good.
Um and then when they're in the car driving back, he's telling her about the license plates and doesn't realize that they're dealer plates. He's like, "I got people running
Oh,
a plate check," and
I love it so much.
yeah.
It's so funny, and it really is such a good introduction to her character too.
Yeah.
Because like she is kind of this like corny Midwest lady, but
Mhm.
like she's pretty smart, you
She's
know?
very
Like
smart.
she knows what she's talking about and she knows what to look for. So
Yeah.
it's a great way to introduce this kind of silly character that actually does know what she's doing.
Yeah. And they're dynamic too, of the differences between them, and like you can tell that he's kind of a rookie, and yeah, I just love it. She says, "I'm not sure I 100% agree with you on your police work there, Lou." Yeah, it's like a perfect introduction to that character. And then even when they get back to the station and her husband Norm is there with lunch,
My God.
he's brought them Arby's.
The amount of scenes in this movie that's just them eating,
Oh yeah.
it's like I don't know what, like it doesn't need to be there, but it adds so much.
Yeah. Well, they just have this such a wholesome relationship and are
Yeah.
just like, yeah, a lot of their activity together seems to revolve around eating.
Just eating.
Before she leaves in the morning, they're having breakfast there, and then they're just, it's just like, it's almost like annoyingly cute when they're talking and she's like, "You got Arby's all over me." And he's like wiping it off of her mouth and stuff. It's this perfect little sweet,
Yeah.
wholesome thing set inside of this horrific story.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, we get the moment back at the car dealership of Jerry talking to that person on the phone. He's trying to stay in control.
Yeah.
He hadn't even it seems like he hadn't even really thought about his son or
Oh my God.
what would happen to him after
Oh,
his mother is kidnapped.
oh
When
my God.
Stan mentions to him, he's like, "Is Scotty okay?" And he just goes, "Scotty? Oh yeah." like he's this
No
guy is
thought,
yeah.
no thought as to how his actions are going to impact people.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
insane.
even his own family. And then I think right after this we get the first kind of look at the hideout. The kidnappers have gone back and taken Jean there, and she tries to run, but there's a bag over her head, so she can't
Oh,
really see
it's
where
so
she's going.
sad. It's so sad.
It's really
And it
intense.
it is funny physically,
Yeah,
objectively, like it is funny, but
yeah, she's
and then they're
falling over and stuff.
laughing, but it is so sad.
Yeah, yeah, because you're just like, well, I feel like especially now, it's so easy to watch a scene like that and be like, oh, this kind of thing happens to people and to women, and you just like, ugh. Like
Yeah.
there's like a black heart at the center of this scene and several others after this.